Hello, you're watching Philly Cam TV and listening to WPPM LP in Philadelphia. My name is Vanessa Graber and this is the People Power Lunch Hour Show. On today's show, I'll be speaking with activist and historian Patrick Duff, who's from New Jersey. He has been working in the last couple years to preserve the historic house in Camden where Martin Luther King lived. He'll talk to us about all the latest developments with that effort, along with all of his experience accessing public records here in Philadelphia and also in New Jersey. We'll talk about how you can use public records and open meetings to hold city government and state government accountable. We'll talk about all that and more on this edition of the People Power Lunch Hour Show. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. Today we'll be speaking with Patrick Duff, who's a regular contributor here at Philly Cam. He's been working in the last couple of years to preserve a historic home in Camden where Martin Luther King once lived. There has been an ongoing saga between him and the state of New Jersey to secure funding and support for the preservation of this home. He most recently was involved in a lawsuit to demand to know where the money has gone to preserve this historic house and how that money has been diverted from its original purpose. We'll talk about that and how he uses open records and open meeting laws to hold government accountable. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you've been on our show a couple times here at Philly Cam, and you've been talking about first, how you discovered that Martin Luther King was living in Camden, and later on you were able to get some very important people, including Representative John Lewis, to support this effort to preserve Martin Luther King's home. Then there was some funding that was allocated to preserve the home, and then we recently discovered through your lawsuit that that funding was reallocated towards other sources. And so you are engaged in a battle to understand why that money was diverted and what all the secrecy is around public meetings associated with that event. So for all of our viewers and listeners don't know, Patrick is going to tell you how he came to discover that Martin Luther King was living in this Camden home.
Well, first what happened was there was an incident in Mapleshade, New Jersey, where there was a school nurse who took it upon herself in 2014 to, she was going to test these young children for Ebola. There was 2 kids, they were exchange students from Rwanda, and when she decided that she was going to take the Ebola controversy on herself and basically remove these children 3 times a day from class and take their temperature, their parents said not going to happen. The township was up in arms. It became an international story. Like literally, it was all over the news. So it caused me to kind of look into the town of Mapleshade, and when I looked into the history of Mapleshade just to see kind of where this culture started, because I know that if that happened in, let's say, in the township I'm in, they would probably have the school nurse's job, you know, but something that allowed the town of Mapleshade to really support the nurse still. And so I looked into the history of Mapleshade, and I started finding really odd, you know, facts about white supremacist music labels operating out of Mapleshade. The last cross that was burned above the Mason-Dixon line was in Mapleshade. The ground that sits on, or that the cross is burned on, sits the Southern Cross Apartments in Mapleshade. It's called the Southern Cross Apartments. And then I found an article that, at first I thought it was a myth or something, and it was about Martin Luther King being refused service in a bar in Mapleshade. And I said, well, that's gotta be false, because, I mean, I grew up in this area and I would know about that. That would be Dr. King's first civil rights incident, because it technically happened in 1950, and Montgomery didn't happen until 1955. So when I learned about it, I was shocked. So I started looking into it more, and then I found it it was in like 3 or 4 of his biographies. It wasn't in all of them though. So it was kind of odd. It was very small blurbs, but it was there. So I knew it kind of justified the fact that it happened. But there was so little information out there about it. I was really intrigued. So I started digging and looking into, to see if I could find any information, police documents, anything like that. And then I approached the township of Maple Shade and I said, hey, you guys should put in a memorial. Let's memorialize this in some way. They told me that I needed to find a primary source document that proved that it happened, and it happened in Maple Shade. Because it could have happened in Morristown, it could have happened in Cherry Hill, and the memories could be, a little bit jogged. So what I did is I literally searched for about a month, and I found the police complaint from Maple Shade with Martin Luther King's signature on it in an old archive in Stanford University. So you couldn't really read it too well, but I saw it was a police complaint, and I saw it said Maple Shade, and I contacted the person that runs the archive. His name's Dr. Claiborne Carson. He runs the Stanford archive of MLK. And within maybe 15 minutes, he sent me a clear copy of the actual complaint. And first, when I got the complaint, I just sent it right to the people in Maple Shade, said, here you go, here's your evidence. But then I read a little further into the complaint, and I saw that the home address of Martin Luther King was Camden, was 753 Walnut Street in Camden, New Jersey. So I went down to the house, and it was abandoned looking, was boarded up. There was a demolition sign on the front of the house. I then went to the tax records office. I found out who owned the home, found out their address. With the help of the guy from the Camden NAACP, a guy named Kelly Francis, he took me to her house. She happened to be a lifetime member of the NAACP. And we knocked on her door and asked her, I said, ma'am, I've got a really silly question. She said, what's that? I said, did you know Martin Luther King? And she said, well, he used to live at my house. So from there, I have been collecting as much information as I can. I've built out the narrative to the point where it's really, it's very clear and concise. Not only did he live there, but he formulated his first agitation from that house. So the incident in Maple Shade that happened wasn't just by happenstance. He just didn't walk into this restaurant. He was told by the owner of the 753 Walnut Street that he shouldn't go to Maple Shade because he wouldn't be served. Now, the owner of the house, his name was Benjamin Hunt, his son Jethro Hunt, had just come back from the military that day on June 11th of 1950, and King and his best friend Walter McCall was actually cousins with the Hunts. That's why they were staying at this house. They said, we're going to go down and get some sandwiches. And Jethro Hunt said, where are you going? Oh, we're going to go to Maple Shade. He said, you're not going to go to Maple Shade. What, are you crazy? They don't serve black people there. And King said to him, well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe we need to go there so we can start going anywhere that we want. So in a sense, the first civil rights agitation, not in a sense, it's real, happened at 753 Walnut Street in Camden, New Jersey. So in March of 2015, I applied for a historic designation for the home. I tried to get it on the Historic Registry in New Jersey. Now, the preliminary process for the application should take no longer than 45 to 90 days. I filed in March of 2015. I still do not have an answer today as to what happened with, or why the house can't be placed on the registry. The New Jersey DEP, every time I find new information, they take the information, but they don't utilize it to approve the home. And they hired a group of researchers from Stockton University to basically look into the work that I did. And I will mention the group is all white. They have an African American history department with several African Americans with PhDs in African American history, but somehow they didn't choose any of those folks to lead the study. Who they chose was a gentleman that sits on the Camden County Historical Commission, who basically, the Preservation Commission, who votes on what homes are or aren't historic in the city of Camden. So he actually sits on the commission that voted or didn't vote on the home that I presented to the city several times. They basically neglected to even vote on it. Same thing the DEP was doing. And somehow the DEP hires Stockton University and places this person, his name's Paul Shop, onto the research team. Now, the research team, by the way, was headed up by Paul Schopp, who only has a Associate of Arts and Science from Burlington County College. He's not a PhD. He doesn't have any degree in history, and but he was chosen over all these professors. In 2015, Mr. Schopp told me that he tried to save the building, the former Mary's Cafe where the incident happened, because he knew how important the incident was to Dr. King's career. So the report, I was sure to open the report and find that it was talking about the incident in Maple Shade and how it was so important, but it didn't. It basically said the incident in Maple Shade was just another day in his life, and found it insignificant, and found the time at his house in Camden to be basically insignificant. So this guy goes from saying something as significant as he was standing in front of the building, in front of the bulldozers trying to save it, to in 2017, all of a sudden he says that it's not a significant event. Now that being said, this is where the open public records come in, which is OPRA, or if you're in Philadelphia, it's called the Right to Know request. So I filed a lot of OPRAs to find out information. One of the OPRAs I wanted to find out, I wanted all communications between Stockton University about the MLK House. So I got over 2,000 internal emails from Stockton. So a lot of reading, a lot of fun reading. When you're reading about yourself sometimes, it's interesting, seeing what other people are saying. Most of them are redacted. So you have emails talking about a research project about Martin Luther King.
Why would that be redacted?
Yeah, why are you redacting emails that are about a research project? That being said, I did another OPRA, and this was for all the employment records of Paul Schopp. I wanted to see how he was hired. I wanted to see his salary. I wanted to see the progression of his work. So in 2015, he was hired and got a salary of about $46,700. I'll just round it off. 2016 gets another contract, same pay, same job. 2017, same pay, same job. Somehow, in the middle of 2017, which is on August 22nd of 2017, he got a raise to $63,000 a year. Now, what happened the day before, that was the preliminary study was turned into the DEP, saying that this house is not significant and that the incident in Maple Shade is not significant. This historian changed his opinion, and the day after his opinion changed, he got a raise of almost $20,000 a year.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence, the day after. So if I'm going to recommend to a university you're trying to do a smear job on somebody and you're going to pay somebody to do it, maybe start paying them before the smear job's done or after, but not the day after, because it doesn't make you look very good.
So I want to kind of recap it, because you've said a lot right
Yes.
there. So first you identified that through a primary source that an incident happened in Maple Shade with Martin Luther King. Then you were able to find through that police report that he lived in Camden. And then you went to the house and you talked to the woman whose house he lived in. Mm-hmm. And you confirmed that as well. Then a research study was conducted because of your request to have it preserved on the historical register. And so after that research request was in, they determined that it was insignificant. So then you tried to ascertain how did they come to that opinion, and that led you to looking into the researcher themselves.
Yes. Now, I never asked them to do a research project into it. Now, there's 51,000 properties on the Historic Registry of New Jersey. There's one that's ever got a research project done to place it on the registry. And that's the only home that has ever been presented to the state of New Jersey that has anything to do with Martin Luther King. So,
what do you think the resistance is in placing something like that on the historical register?
I don't know.
I mean, it's
in
an economically depressed area. I mean, nobody's vying for that property per se. It's not like it's waterfront, redevelopment zone. What do you think the resistance is to wanting to protect that home?
I wish I could really figure it out. That's why I've been filing so many requests, because I wanted to find out what they were saying behind closed doors. Like, what's going on here? If I have it right, what I think happened is that me, a guy who is not college educated, I'm just a kind of a thorn in some government side, find something that was so significant historically that was missed by all these scholars throughout the years, that the people who decide what is important, quote unquote important, the New Jersey DEP, made a decision before they even got any of the information that since it was coming from me, that the decision would be no. And that's the only conclusion I can come up with. It was a personal kind of problem with the actual presenter. And I say that for two reasons, because when I got all the help from government officials, Camden basically shut down the street one day. We brought John Lewis up.
Right, there was enormous accolades and attention brought to this discovery of yours, and you were thanked for your work.
I kind of was. Now, an interesting thing is that in one of the, was it Philly Voice's article about the situation, there was a picture that it was me, Mrs. Hunt, John Lewis, Mayor Red, and Donald Norcross. There was this picture of us in front of the house. It was, a really powerful picture. We're going to save this place. But in Philly Voice article, it didn't mention my name one time, and it cut me out of the picture. Right? So I'm going, wait, what's going on here, So it made me, I started to figure out that they didn't want me in the picture. This group, Cooper's Ferry Partnership, agreed to help. When they agreed to help, so much had gone on so far that I was very wary of the process. So we have this big meeting. You have the city attorneys are there. Donald Norcross's office is there. Mary Cruz from his office. You have the people from Cooper's Ferry Partnership. And I took my cell phone and I looked around the room and I just felt uncomfortable. I hit record and I put it right on the table and I recorded exactly what they said. And everybody kind of looked at the phone, and they told me that day that as long as we got the historical designation from the city of Camden, that Cooper's Ferry would come in and take over and help with this project. Now, if you can, this is the crazy part. So they say, okay, we're going to help. We're about to sign a contract for them to buy the home. End of January comes, they renege, they don't sign the contract. They go forward ahead and basically tell us a couple months later that they can't be involved in the project unless it has the historical designation from the state. Now remember, at this same time they're saying this Paul Shop is basically creating this study to dismantle my work. And Cooper's Ferry Partnership says we have to wait on the results of this study to see if we can be involved in the project. Now, this is in April of 2017, so they told us they couldn't move forward. But in January of 2017, there was a signed agreement between Cooper's Ferry, me, and the property owner to say that they would keep us abreast of any grants, awards, applications, anything that was happening towards the MLK House, they would tell us about. That was on January 12th of 2017. On January 30th of 2017, without our knowledge, they applied for $250,000 in grants.
Those are the community block grants.
Community development block grants.
Correct.
Actually, they applied for $160,000, and they said they had matching funds also. Now, this was without our knowledge. They did not tell us about this. In October of 2017, a reporter calls me and says, hey, I wanted to do a story about what's going on. Can you tell me what's happening? And I said, what's happening is I have no idea what's happening. I've asked this group, are they going to help? Are they not going to help? She does a little dig, and she finds out that there's this grant that they were awarded.
And what was the grant for?
The grant was for restoration and rehabilitation of the MLK House. It was very specific. It was for curation of museum exhibits, for lighting, very specific for what it was for. Now, when I found out about this, I went through the roof, and I sent an email, and I asked, why are you applying? I sent it to the city. By the way, here's a really odd part. The reason why this reporter started digging is not because she called me. I called her because I called the city. I called Vincent Bassara from the city of Camden. I said, hey, there's a big hole in the roof. The winter is coming. What's happening here? Can't we get some money to put a tarp on the roof? He tells me they can't get money to put a tarp on the roof. So I'm like, wait, you could shut down the street, bring John Lewis out and do a dog and pony show, but you can't get money to protect the roof of this house? So that's when I actually called this reporter. I said, hey, can you help me and do some digging? When she called me and told me about the grant, I then called them and said, what are you doing? You're applying for a grant without our permission?
Yeah, and what was the owner's take on this? I mean, you said she wasn't aware either.
No, she was shocked. In a sense, she was shocked, and in another sense, she wasn't. She's lived in Camden for her whole life. She's seen people come in and do these dog and pony shows, and nothing happens.
So they applied for the grant, and they were awarded that.
They were awarded the grant. They got the grant. Well, the grant money, we don't really know if they really got it or not. I filed numerous OPA requests. I wanted to find out the minutes to the meetings that this money was given. I wanted to find out the resolutions, anything that had to do with that money and the application. So I send in my OPA request for the minutes, and I'm told that there were no attendees at the meeting, thus no minutes were required. So I send back an email and say, listen, that's not the way it works. You need to have minutes even if no attendees. If nobody made a public comment, it doesn't mean nothing happened at the meeting. Send me the minutes to the meeting. They send back another thing, listen, since there were no public comments, no minutes are required. So
I just want to add that I follow Patrick on Facebook, and you posted a lot of these responses,
yes.
right? So a lot of the things that you're saying, you know, they're corroborated with these documents, right?
Yeah, listen, I'm an open book on this. You can check my emails. I don't care. I'll send you them all. You know, I know what I said. I know what was said to me. I know the promises that were made. And I know they weren't, we're going to go get a grant without your permission and do with it what we want.
But documentation is really key to this, right?
It is, absolutely.
It's like every step of the way has been some sort of like paper or electronic
Absolutely.
trail of communication, documentation. And that's what I want our viewers and listeners to understand, that when these things happen, it has to be some sort of communication through email, minutes. There has to be documents associated.
Well, there should be.
Right.
There
In
should
theory.
be. There should be. Now, Camden said there was no minutes to this meeting, so I went ahead and I filed suit under the Open Public Meetings Act, which basically they violated the Open Public Meeting Act because, listen to this, they had a meeting on April 3rd of 2017 to give away $3.8 million. Now, it was advertised on April 5th. We're going to have a meeting on April 3rd, but it's advertised on April 5th, 2 days after the meeting took place. So when I get all this paperwork, I realize that not only did they have the meeting wrong, they advertised it wrong. They say they don't have minutes to the meeting. So I filed suit and asked for minutes, asked for any documentation having to do with it. The city filed what's called a letter of sanctions, basically a frivolous suit sanction, and they wanted the court to sanction me for filing a frivolous suit against them. The court didn't do that. We went to a hearing. At the hearing, which was just unbelievable, the city attorney said that they had given me all the information that I requested in the OPA request, that they had given all this information. And the judge said, well, who was at these meetings? She said, well, only 2 people were at the one meeting and one person was at the next meeting.
So one of the documents you posted shows that there's a sign-in sheet.
There is a sign-in
meeting.
sheet, yes.
How did you get the sign-in sheet? I mean, if you can't reveal your source, but...
They gave it to me.
Okay.
I'm telling you, they gave it to me in one of the OPA requests I made. I requested, you know, all the information, and it was in the consolidated plan. It was a part of the, probably like 300 pages, but you fish through the pages and you keep looking, and all of a sudden I find a sign-in sheet where there's 7 people present at the meeting, where she said only 1 person was present at the meeting. She told a judge in open court, Eileen Lampett, who is the city attorney of Camden, told Judge Silverman Katz that there was only 1 person at the meeting, that I have a sign-in sheet that shows that 7 people were at the meeting. So not only should they have minutes, some of the people the first meeting, by the way, and I had made this comment in court, I said, Your Honor, it's not like I'm trying to sell heroin. I'm trying to fix the home that Dr. King lived in. Well, the April 3rd meeting, the one that was advertised on April 5th, the methadone clinic was there giving their presentation to get money to sell legal heroin in the city of Camden, but they didn't give me notice that I could be there. Cooper's Ferry wasn't there that day to make a presentation because they were already in. By the way, Mayor Red is on the board of Cooper's Ferry. So a little bit of conflict of interest there. You know, the Eileen Lampett in court says that these people aren't at the meetings. She then says they gave all the information to me. And the judge then asks a really simple question. Well, if you gave them all the information, where's the money? And the city attorney says, well, I know it's somewhere here in his many OPA requests, Your Honor. And the judge says, okay, well, then where's the money? Well, give me a minute, Your Honor. She starts flipping through the papers. Where's the money, she says again. She hit her, I think, 6 times with the question, where's the money? And finally she said, you know what, Your Honor, I don't know where the money is. And the judge said, you didn't provide him what he asked you for. He asked you the status of that grant.
It's taxpayer money,
Yeah,
right?
and she said that very clearly. Doesn't a taxpayer have the right to know where our money is being spent? She said it's very simple. And when she couldn't answer, she said, you know what we're going to do? Mr. Duff's going to find out today where the money is. I'm giving a 10-minute break. You're going to go call somebody in the city, and you're going to find out where the money is. So she comes back in 10 minutes later, and the judge says, so what's going on? She said, Your Honor, actually that money was just reallocated to the fire department. So
What was it like in the courtroom when she said that? I mean, what were you feeling?
I got a hot flash. It was almost like this bit of anger came over me. You know, it's, how dare you? You know, so.
And the judge, what?
She said, that's amazing to me. She goes, how does money that's earmarked for a historic house somehow go to the fire department? So
is this the next phase, trying to find out how that was reallocated?
no, you know, yes and no. I mean, I've got a lot of documents from them. They gave me so many documents, it's kind of not even funny. They gave me documents that I didn't need to, but one document they gave me that was very important shows what's called their spend down. It's HUD basically contacting the city of Camden and saying, hey, this is how much money you have extra in your grant account. You need to spend it.
Right, before the grant term is over.
Yes. Well, you know about grants. So the HUD regulation is if you have 1.5% of, or 1.5 times of what your grant budget should be in your escrow account, then you are in violation because basically you're not giving these grants out.
Right, and you usually have to return the money.
Either return it or reallocate it somewhere, right?
Right.
Figure out something to reallocate it to. Camden, as of May of 2017, had 2.47 times the grant amount. They had $3.2 million over what their actual amount should have been, meaning there was $3 million in grants that were awarded that never made it to the source. They have millions of dollars. It's not. I thought I was like the exception to the rule, and I'm just the rule.
So could it be, and I'm just speculating here, that in an effort to spend down the money, these reallocations were made?
See, that's why I filed all these OPA requests. That's why I got. Listen, sometimes you want to know the answer to the question before you ask it, right? So especially when you have all these OPA requests and you have all this information at your hands, formulate your questions the right way. And basically, Camden is in a situation where I have affidavits from their employees of what they said. The only time that they can prove that the conversation really began about diverting the money to the firehouse from the MLK house is February 14th of 2018. That's the first conversation, which is a person sending a letter to the Courier Post saying, hey, we need to advertise this in the paper. We want it to go in the February 19th edition of the Courier Post. February 19th, by the way, is my birthday. So I wonder if they did that on
No wonder
purpose.
you remember all these dates.
Oh, I remember them anyway. So remember, this is on February 14th. They're sending this letter to the paper. Well, what happened 2 days before that? I filed suit. So until I filed suit against the city to find out where this money was, the money didn't go anywhere. It was just sitting there. They made up the story that they got a letter back in May of 2017 saying they have to move money, but they don't move it until February of 2018. It just doesn't make any sense.
So I just want to go back to one thing before we take a break. What is going to happen? You have this sign-in sheet, right? And they say they gave you all the records, but
Yeah.
the sign-in sheet proves that they didn't provide the minutes. What's happening with that? That the judge?
Well, I filed a memorandum with the court, basically a motion of reconsideration, saying, "Hey, you were lied to. Here's the proof that you were lied to. Not only do I want you to reverse your decision, I want you to sanction the city attorney for lying in open court." And the whole basis of the judge's decision was based upon how many people were at that meeting. So what's going to happen is, I don't know. I don't know if the judge is going to be biased. Because, by the way, I asked the judge to recuse himself because Eileen Lampett, the city attorney, was his law clerk. Now, he went through this whole big spiel. He said, listen, we have a rule in New Jersey. It's basically 6 months from being a law clerk, because if the rule was that law clerks couldn't present in front of judges, it would hinder the justice system. is what he says to me. Now remember, a judge just recused herself from our case. He's the second judge. She was a law clerk for the other judge too. So I said, Your Honor, can I ask you, why did the other judge recuse herself? Well, I can't tell you that. She was a law clerk for both of you. He then says, well, I got to let you know that I did go to her wedding too. Now, the law clerk thing I could look past, but him going to her wedding, getting a present from, him to her, I mean, that's more than just a relationship of a law clerk. He went to her wedding, But that being said, Mr. Cassell, if you're watching, I think you're fair.
So if you're just tuning in, you are watching and listening to the People Power Lunch Hour on Philly Cam TV on WPPM 106.5 FM. I'm Vanessa Maria Graber. I'm speaking with activist and historian Patrick Duff, who's from South Jersey, and we've been talking about the ongoing effort to preserve the house that Martin Luther King lived in Camden. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about the legal efforts to preserve the home, and also about some of Patrick's other sleuthing using the Open Records Act and the Right to Know Acts here in Philadelphia to gain more information about several other ongoing cases. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. On today's show, I've been speaking with Patrick Duff, who is a local community activist, historian, and super sleuth. And we've been talking about all of his work to preserve the historic home in Camden where MLK once lived. He's been engaged in an ongoing legal battle with the city of Camden to get information about how the decisions were made to reallocate funding that was designated to restore the home that's now been diverted to the fire department. He's been telling us about all of the research he's been doing to document the historical actions that MLK was engaged in during his time in Camden County, and also how the city, the state, and a bunch of other entities have been communicating and making decisions around historic preservation. So when we left off, you were talking about what last happened in your lawsuit and what you were trying to do to get some of the information. You were supposed to have a hearing yesterday. Tell us what happened.
So what happened was on Monday morning, I went and I filed, was it Monday morning? Yes, Monday morning. I filed the memorandum basically showing that the city lied. Not only did they lie, the court based its decision on this misrepresentation that's now proven to be false. And I also showed that because the judge had ruled that that the meeting was only governed under what's called CFRs, their federal regulations, okay, the Code of Federal Regulations, and the Code of Federal Regulations book is like this big. It's like a Bible, so to read it is really difficult. But luckily I can read, and after the hearing, I got in and I really read into the book really good, and I found something called jurisdiction of authority for the consolidated plan. And it says really clearly, jurisdiction authority, that the consolidated plan must adhere to all state laws. So that means the Open Public Meeting Act goes to that meeting, and there should have been minutes even if there was only one person at the meeting. But that being said, now that we know there's 7 people at the one meeting and 6 at the other, there's definitely got to be minutes, right? So, but the key is, what happened is on February 12th I file suit. February 14th, they send a letter to the Courier Post saying, we want to post this ad saying that we're giving the money from the fire company, or the MLK house to the firehouse. It posts on the 19th, right? On the 20th, an email is sent from the grants administrator to the housing department administrator, a guy named Alfred Dansbury. And it says, did you see the ad? And there's a big happy smiley face after it says it. So I don't know what's so happy about giving $229,000 designated for the MLK house to the fire company, but in her email it said that. That kind of tipped me off a little bit. The ad on February 19th said that citizens will have until March 23rd to make comments. So you have a 30-day comment period. So they have to have a 30-day comment period to reallocate this money. But on March 13th is when they signed the resolution. So they didn't give the community time to comment on it. They signed a resolution on the 13th, 20 days after it. Mm-hmm. So I can prove that not only did they sign the resolution, but without allowing for 30 days of public comment, but I can show that they had no discussions of giving this money away until I sued them. Mm-hmm. So for them, it's just common ground. It's just that what they do. They just kind of take this money from poor people and people trying to do something in their city and tell them to kiss off until they get sued.
And I gotta say, this thing is common. Many public agencies have been sued for not giving the public enough time to comment on rules and regulations, to weigh in on funding, doing that same thing, making decisions before the commenting period is over. Like, this is a thing that has happened many times at the federal level, state level. So it's not unusual for citizens to sue an agency for not allowing adequate time for the public to engage them in the decision-making process.
$33 million just missing. It's just missing. I mean, that's not missing. It's gone. Somebody misallocated those funds, and they should go to jail for it, is what should happen. You can't just have $33 million missing. And the reason why Philadelphia has so much money missing, and the reason why Philadelphia is in the position it is because they don't give citizens the right to comment at their own city meetings. I sued the city of Philadelphia in 2014 because they don't have any open public comment section at their city meetings.
You have to be on the agenda in order to speak. And if you're not on the list to speak on that agenda item, you can't go there and speak publicly to the city council. And furthermore, even if you kind of do a bait and switch, which some people have done, they really press you to speak on that agenda item.
Well, they'll selectively cut you off.
Right.
If you get up there and you ramble about nothing, and it doesn't make any sense, and you're not putting them on the fire, City Council will let you say whatever you want. But as soon as you go up there and mention the fact that, hey, you guys are in violation of the sunshine laws by not allowing open public comment, they cut you right off. I got literally taken out of the City Council meeting last time. I got surrounded by all the, I don't know what they are, I call them bellboys. They look like bellboys with their jackets on. And they're, because I said that, I just want to say it's National Sunshine Week. And the City Council here is still in violation of the sunshine laws, and Derek Clark's like, sir, are you here to comment on the agenda item? And, well, that's the problem, Mr. Clark, is you don't let people comment on what they should be able to comment on.
Especially things that are happening in real time.
Absolutely.
So it takes a while for things to get on the agenda. There's a process where you have to communicate with City Hall to put something on the agenda. But if something happens the day before or a few days before, it's really hard for the public then to comment directly during those council meetings.
It's impossible. There's no space for it.
Right.
So I mean, the whole idea of a public meeting is for the public to be able to be engaged in the meeting. The sunshine laws in Pennsylvania are really clear. They say that citizens should be able to comment on matters of concern. There's then a comma right after matters of concern. So that matters of concern is whatever concerns the citizen or the taxpayer, right? And then it says, or matters that may be or are on the calendar. So maybe on the calendar doesn't say on the agenda or on the calendar. It says maybe. So that could be something I bring up today you find so important that it goes onto the agenda, or it's just a matter of concern I have. They pigeonhole free speech in the city by saying you can only go on these certain items. And that's a part of how $33 million goes missing. Because nobody's allowed to actually ask questions. And when you do ask questions, the right questions, like Emmanuel Bussey, who does the different kind of Democrat, he also gets cut off when he tries to speak about stuff. Because he makes salient points that show that some of the people in City Council are criminals. I mean, it's just simple. I mean,
Well, I wanted to ask you, because we only have 15 minutes left in this show, about some of the other sleuthing, and I call it sleuthing because it is kind of the work that an investigative journalist would do, and you've taken it upon yourself as a concerned, engaged citizen to look into some of these matters. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories that gained national attention was, some investigating you did around the Starbucks incident. So, of course, many of you might have heard that 2 African-American men were sitting in a Starbucks waiting for a friend, and then they were asked to leave because they had not purchased anything yet. And then the manager called the police on them, and they were subsequently arrested, released. They settled with the city and Starbucks. Starbucks then had a mandatory, bias training for all their employees in their 8,000 stores. So there was a whole thing around that. And one of the things that you looked into was how many times the police were called during the period that particular manager was employed at the Starbucks. What did you find?
Yeah, I actually went even further back than that. I went back to this last open request I just got yesterday. I went back to 2015. So January 2015 all the way through until 2018 when the incident really happened. And what I found is that some reason Starbucks called 911 a lot. That one Starbucks called 911 50 plus times in the 15 months leading up to that incident for what I don't know, because it's in one of the nicest sections in the city. I mean, it's right next to Rittenhouse Square. You can see why the cops come so quick, because there's cops all just sitting around Rittenhouse Square, right? Mm-hmm. So I found that not only did they have 50 plus calls in those 15 months leading up to it, but the previous year, which is 2016, where this woman, Holly Hilton, had been hired in 2017, they only had a total of 11 calls in that whole year. So you went from 11 calls in a 12-month period to 58 calls in a 15-month period. So there something happened there. What also happened at the beginning of 2017 was the creamsicle got elected, and that changed a lot of people's how they view African Americans and what they can do to them. But that being said, what I did find though is with these latest records, I got just yesterday for the OFC coffee shop, which is 3 blocks from the 18th and Spruce coffee shop. In 3 years, since 2015 all the way to today, there was only 10 calls to that one coffee shop, total 911 calls. 5 of them were for a tripped alarm at night. So you're telling me a business that's literally 3 blocks away on the same 1800 block, 3 blocks away in Center City, that one store has to call 58 times to 911 where the other store calls almost none.
It sounds like that it's possible that employees are using the police as their private security.
They are, absolutely. I mean, and what amazes me about that is that the police would allow that to happen. You know, they were called for a 3306, which is dispersing a crowd, to that store 28 times in 1 year. That means almost 3 times a month they were walking in there and saying, hey, let's go.
It's interesting to me because there's a lot of people from North Philly, from Southwest, West Philly, who will call the police, cars stolen, houses broken into, they've been mugged, abandoned cars, drug activity. Nobody responds.
Well, that's a good segue into this. I mean, Cosmo DiNardo, the quadruple murderer in Bucks County, who buried 4 men under the ground, is now being held in a medium security prison. It's called the Retreat. It's literally called the Retreat. They have dogs for the prisoners. They have visitation rooms where the whole family can come in and visit with these prisoners. This guy's a quadruple murderer. Somehow he's being held in this prison. Now, that being said, what people don't know about Cosmo DiNardo is that it was the community of Ben Salem and some of the political people in Ben Salem that allowed him to fester. They allowed that terrorist to fester in their community. And the mayor of Ben Salem, his name is Joseph DiGirolamo, put Cosmo DiNardo on the Drug Advisory Council in 2015 and 2016. So here's a kid that was a known drug dealer in the community.
And he was very young.
Yeah.
And not part of any student groups like Students for Sensible Drug Policy, normal, like...
In 2016, he was removed from schools. He was told he couldn't come back to 2 schools because people were scared of him. I mean, Cosmo DiNardo was a school shooter in the making, is what he was. In 2017, he was shooting a shotgun off in the middle of a neighborhood in Ben Salem. The neighbors see it, they call the police, he jumps in his Escalade, cruises down the road with a shotgun, gets pulled over by the cop, taken to the station, doesn't go to jail. No jail time for that. He just got out of a mental institution. So the charge was you weren't allowed to have this gun. They then go to the judges, the new judge, by the way, who's the mayor's nephew, and he drops all the charges against DiNardo. 2 months later is when these people's bodies are buried. You know, so you have this person who was basically running amok in this town, you know.
And his Instagram is very provocative.
Oh my God.
You know, I think that's the first place people went to try to understand the psychology. And there's a lot of disturbing posts on there.
Yeah, and what I found was that the property that the people were buried on was worth about $1.8 million, but DiNardo's paid $5.45 million for it. It's a property that can't be built on. It's conservancy land. So there's a lot of things that are happening in that case that, you know, you're talking about 911 going and investigating things, that I think that if it was not a well-connected rich family in Ben Salem, that none of this would have happened. Because they wouldn't have allowed that person to believe that he can do these things without repercussion.
And it's again, it's not uncommon. We've seen this with other killers and you know, maybe even terrorists, like people that have caused a lot of harm, that there was a lot of signs, there was a lot of missed opportunities, you know, especially with the Parkland shooter as well, that they weren't able to do anything, but yet 2 black men are sitting in a Starbucks waiting for a client to arrive, and they're immediately apprehended and arrested.
And they go to jail that night. Cosmo DiNardo is shooting a shotgun in the middle of a residential neighborhood after being in a mental institution, doesn't go to jail, but 2 black men sitting in a Starbucks go to jail. The other thing that was odd was that the mayor of Ben Salem basically said he didn't know how Cosmo got onto this advisory board. This is the really interesting part. And this is where media is failing us. Media is failing us because they don't dig in and ask the questions. Now, he says he doesn't know how Cosmo DiNardo got on this board, right? He's the only one that can put him on the board, though, the mayor. So the media doesn't go and ask more difficult questions. They don't even look who else is on the board. Guess who else was on the board? His granddaughter. The mayor's granddaughter sat on the same board as DiNardo that the mayor said he doesn't know how Cosmo DiNardo got on the board.
So I would imagine there has to be some sort of paper trail or like something on how people got appointed or what happened in the meetings that they were at. Like, is that something that interests you, like looking into that?
Yeah, and I am. That's what I mean, listen, this is an addiction. This is I mean, once you get involved in being an activist and then realize the power that you actually have, I mean, why would you take it back from yourself? Why would you even hit the brakes a little bit, you know?
Yeah, well, that research
we're in dangerous times.
It's true. That research that you did with Starbucks was then published nationally, right? And they cited you, you know, as a amateur historian, an investigator. But really, anybody can do this if they have the time and the interest.
But it takes no time, though. It literally takes an email.
Well, if you get 200 records to sort through, it does
You're
take
right.
time
You're
to
right.
read it. But, you don't need any legal background or journalistic background to do this.
No. And you know what? People should want to do it. You know, you should want to know what's happening in your community.
So we just have a few minutes left. Can you give some practical advice or take people through some steps of how they would obtain records? You cited the Right to Know Act here in Pennsylvania and then also the Open Records Act in New Jersey. What's the first step if you want to obtain some sort of records or documentation?
Well, in New Jersey, there's a really cool tool called the Oprah machine. You can go to a council or a city's website and find their Oprah, button, and it'll usually give you like a form. But the Oprah law doesn't say you have to file a form. So this Oprah machine does a third-party system where you go in there, you type in your municipality that you're looking for. Let's say it's Bordentown. So Bordentown, it'll come up Bordentown Council, Bordentown Police, whatever they have on Bordentown. You click on the one you want, and it sends an email really easily, just saying, hey, I'd like information of all the minutes to certain meetings, all the emails between the mayor and his secretary. You can ask for the pay of everybody in the town. I want to know how much the cops get paid. I want to know how many black people have worked in an office. Here's a good one. The Historic Preservation Office of New Jersey, found this through an Oprah request, has 27 people working in their office and only one black person. And she's the lowest paid employee by over $25,000 a year. And I got that through an Oprah request. Now, did they want to give me that information? No. But they have to. It's part of public records. Now, in Philadelphia, it's called the Right to Know request. An example is they have a Right to Know officer in Philadelphia, literally, that you can send your request to. Usually, it'll be about 7 days until you get your information back. But with the Starbucks thing, they realized they made a little mistake, I guess, of letting that information out because it really went to the root, put it out nationally, and a couple of the Philadelphia Tribune had it on their front page. And look, what happened is the Philadelphia police changed their 911 policy. They didn't change their 911 policy because that one incident with Rashawn. That's not how it works. They changed it because they were going to be forced into changing it because they're in a position where they went there 50 plus times, not 1 or 2 times.
Well, they were shown to have been probably misusing time and resources to frivolous, calls. And so showing a pattern of the response, I think, is also what contributed to that.
And by the way, there were 911 was called at that Starbucks 22 minutes after those men were arrested. So there was somebody else that got arrested or taken out of that Starbucks that same day.
Wow.
And and I think what happens is, and I really did a good job of just going on the radio and saying it after a council person came on, or when I knew that chief of police might be listening. I was on KYW radio. So I put the pressure on the police, I did. And they wouldn't give me my right to know request for the other information until yesterday, until after I was on another show saying, hey, I'm not getting this information, and then they begrudgingly sent it to me, which, as I said, showed that the next coffee shop didn't call 911 but only a couple times in 3 years. And then the one on Market Street, 1800 Market Street, had even more calls than the one on Spruce Street.
So there's something about their culture that is causing them to just automatically defer to the state, right? And I think that goes to the root of not just Starbucks, but a lot of people that have been shown very recently on camera, being recorded with video, instead of confronting people directly, having a conversation, they just pick up the phone and dial 911. So I think that showing that this is a trend that's happening, and probably for a really long time, this isn't really anything new, but what is it about the culture that makes people call 911 instead of trying to deal with the conflict directly? I think that is a question that maybe can't be answered through Oprah requests, but something that, deserves further discussion. So if people want to follow you and stay tuned, especially people in Camden, because you've received a lot of public support from the community, people that really feel that this house should be preserved and really are excited about the work that you're doing. How can people, follow you and kind of stay in touch?
I'm on Twitter at Neo John Brown. That's Neo John Brown. Little kind of play on the old John Brown. I'm also, you can email me 101etm@gmail.com. I'll answer any emails. I don't got a problem with it. And really, if people want to kind of follow me, you look for me in the papers, because I try to find like right now, you have that shooting in Deptford. Yesterday I went down and I took video of the whole scene, and something's not adding up. The only way that the officer would have been in any danger is if he walked out in the street to stop the car in front of the car. So it doesn't stop, so if you just look for cool news stories, and it's probably something I helped with.
Well, I appreciate your vigilance, because I think we need more people to do that, to pay attention to what's going on, to want to research and know more, and ultimately advocate for the public interest.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all of your
You're
work
welcome.
and for sharing, and we hope you'll come back on the show when you have your next court case and your latest development.
June 26th, next
All right,
case.
so if you're in Camden, you
Yeah.
can attend that hearing in person.
And there will be a lot of media there. I've already been contacted. The NBC is doing a big thing. There's several newspapers that'll be there. So, in the last hearing, they tried to make the media so they couldn't come in the room. And the one reporter's like, "I'm sorry, that's not happening." So.
Well, maybe Philly Cam will be on the scene. So I want to thank you for appearing
very
on
much.
the show. Patrick Duff, community activist, super sleuth, and historian, here with us on the People Power Lunch Hour show. Thank you all for watching and listening to Philly Cam TV and on WPPM 106.5 FM. Want to thank all of our producers of the show, all of our interns, and all of the wonderful people here at Philly Cam that make the show possible. I'm Vanessa Maria Graber. Thanks for listening and watching.